Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello everyone, my name is Steven Jodren. Welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. Joining me as always are Monica Fai and Jake Watroba. This week we chat MLS transfers, FC Cincinnati with Charlie Hatch, and we do this year's first edition of the Counterattack with Jake Watroba. Please make sure you follow the show on Twitter, Uncle Sam's Soccer Pod. There you can get the latest news, information, and everything you need to know about the show. And if you are listening through any of those podcast apps, go ahead and hit the subscription button, wherever that is, and give us a 5-star rating, because we are the best soccer podcast out there. Now, let's get to today's show. Well, Jake, you and I survived the polar vortex. How fantastic was that?
Oh, it was great. Although I did take a look at the forecast. It's going to snow 5 out of the next 7 days. So I don't know. I think I might want that 50 below zero wind chill back instead of dealing with snow for the next week.
There you go. And Armand, you were sick once again.
I feel like I'm always sick. So here I am, sick again.
Yeah, I played 90 minutes of soccer on Friday, and I guess my body was like, it's a terrible idea, Armand. Don't do that again, because I'm feeling sick again. But the caveat to this is I've watched a lot of A-League recently because I haven't been able to sleep until 2 a.m. So lots of Brisbane Roar, whatever their name is, and Melbourne City.
That's funny you mentioned that, Armand, because I also took in an obscure league yesterday morning. I watched the Indian Super League.
Oh, FC Pune City?
It's Pune.
Pune
I
City.
came to find out, disappointingly, it was Pune and not FC Pune City. So, I think it was FC Chennai or something like that versus Pune City. So the Punes came up out on top. So
wait, Pune or Pune?
It's Pune, but we're gonna keep it Pune.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to keep it Pune.
There you go. Well, listeners, I know a lot of you paid attention to the U.S. men's national team. They took on Costa Rica. They won 2-0 Saturday. Now, here is our 30-second abbreviated chat.
Oh, geez. Okay. Nice performance. Good goals. Nick Lima looks good. Go USA. They have clarity with Greg Berhalter at the helm. I really didn't care that much.
All right, there you go. And the reason why I made Armand do that on the spot is go listen to last week's episode. We do get in-depth with Joseph Lowry about the U.S. men's national team and these friendlies. Now, let's get to MLS transfers because that really took the leading charge this past week in U.S. soccer. You guys surprised with the moves that were made this past week?
Yes. I mean, yeah, I 100% was surprised because there was like some moves out of left field where you're sitting there like, oh, like why is this happening? And there's other moves that happen. You're like, oh, finally this happened. I mean, so many. It was a big selling and a big, I think, I don't know if turning point is the right word, but it was a strong trend for MLS in the transfer window in terms of selling their pieces.
There were some moves that didn't really surprise me. Obviously, Miguel Almiron leaving for Newcastle shouldn't surprise anybody. Sebastian Giovinco leaving for Al Hilal. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Al Hilal. Come on, man, you got to throw the accent in there.
That didn't really surprise me. However, the almost transfer of Luciano Acosta from DC United, that was kind of out of left field. I know we were all kind of taken aback by that just because no one had really heard of Acosta being moved or DC looking to move him. And the fact that he almost went to PSG was just as surprising too.
Yeah, so let's talk about Miguel Almiron's move to Newcastle, obviously shattering the previous MLS transfer fee record. upwards of $26-27 million, depending on which report you read. Almiron in 2017, guys, 31 matches, 9 goals, and 8 assists. In 2018, with his run with Atlanta United to MLS Cup, 37 matches, 13 goals, and 11 assists. Almiron, $27 million, doubles Alphonso Davies' move of $13 million, which could actually rise to 22 after add-ons. Josie Altidore, $10 million, Jack Harrison, $6 million, and Matt Miazga, $5 million. Isn't it insane that we finally have a player leave MLS for a hefty fee versus, $5 or $6 million when that's just chump change in today's transfer market?
Or like 1 million. We'll sell you for $500K. It's like 1 million. 27 million. I didn't think that Atlanta would get that much because Atlanta had no leverage. You already signed his replacement. You have to be roster compliant. You have no leverage basically in a situation. Newcastle will be like, okay, we can lowball you and you have to accept it because what are you gonna do? But I guess they were like, hey, we could get rid of Barco and send him on loan if we really need to. And Newcastle's like, all right, fine. Like, yeah, I guess we don't have the leverage anymore, so we'll splurge and get Almiron. I'm interested to see how he'll do because Jake insists that he'll be in the championship next year. But I mean, we'll see if they have performances like it did against City midweek. I don't know if we're talking the same thing.
I'm not a Newcastle expert by any means. As a matter of fact, I don't even know where they are on the table, actually. I know there's 5 or 6 points separating, was it like 13th place from 18th place or whatever. It sounds like Fulham and Huddersfield are already relegated, basically. But I'm kind of confused as to how he's going to actually perform at Newcastle, given that they're fighting off relegation and Almiron comes from a club that was basically running circles around teams in MLS, and now he's going to go play for a Newcastle team that is probably going to concede 70%, 60 to 70% of possession every match. And I'm going to be curious to know how he's going to play in a system like that.
That's a great point, Jake. I haven't thought about that. Wonderful point, actually. Kind of leads into Benitez's comments here, talking to Sky Sports about the price tag. Quote, it means that we realized that we needed something in this position. Obviously, the offensive players are more expensive. We've been talking about a number 10 for a while, and it's a position that if we bring in someone, it has to be expensive. Now, clearly, I think he's taking a shot at the cheap ownership of Newcastle here, but they spent the money, and if you read further along, quote, but the main thing for me is to forget about the money. We are happy with Almiron, ? Hopefully, we will be happy. He has a potential, pace, work rate, and ability to help the team and do something that we didn't have before. There's a lot of weight on this on the shoulders of Miguel Almiron. Fair to say, right? The way Benitez is talking here, price tag, being expensive, playing the number 10 role, talking about his pace, work rate, ability, and the fact that, as Jake just alluded to, they're in a relegation battle.
With Almiron, though, I mean, when you watch Atlanta play, he could break within an instant. If they play counterattacking football, the ability he has with his pace and his pace on the ball too. This guy is so quick; he can break on an instant and lead a counterattack with some offensive creativity. And I don't think that's something Newcastle has had. Watching like the 3 games I've watched Newcastle play.
Hey, let me jump in here real quick then. When you talk about he can hit with his pace and everything, he can hit teams in the counterattack. Can Miguel Almiron play defense? I mean, let's be real. Newcastle's probably playing 9-10 men behind the ball at all times. Is he going to be able to chase down players with the ball?
His work rate, Jake.
In the midfield.
What's that? His work rate. Like, I mean, if you remember, Tata Martino's system was really demanding in terms of he wanted to press, and Almiron would, if I remember correctly, this is 2 months after the MLS season ended, so I'm using my memory right here. He would drop back at least into the midfield and at least a little deeper to try to retrieve the ball and go from there. Because Tata Martino's system was really just a pressing system that required everyone to put in maximum effort, no matter what. I mean, I think he can, but I also would expect that Benitez would make some sort of adjustment in terms of how the team plays, especially when you're going to fit in a $27 million signing.
I mean, here's my thing. It's one thing, to chase down an opposing player when you're playing Orlando City, right? That's great. Miguel Almiron can do that. He can be disruptive in the midfield. It's another thing, though, when you're playing against Liverpool and you have to, I don't even know who's in Liverpool's midfield. Keita Nagby, is he the number 10 there? I mean, but you know what I'm saying? It's one thing to chase down an opposing player on Orlando City and then, go and do it against Liverpool too. And that's going to be the big question mark for me as it pertains to Miguel Almiron. Can he make a big enough impact on Newcastle? I'm unsure. I'm unsure on it, to be quite honest.
Newcastle are in 15th, Jake, 2 points clear of the drop, sitting on 24 points. But let's talk about the MLS angle here. Atlanta United president Darren Eales, quote, "I think we can say after this transfer window, if you're a young player and you're a club in MLS trying to attract a player coming to the prime of his career, you're able to point to Miguel Almiron or Alphonso Davies and now say, look, you can come to this league and actually get noticed and moved on to top clubs and top leagues in the world." Guys, do we agree with this comment?
I would say yes. I mean, with all the moves made, I mean, look, you're going to be a special talent no matter what. But with all the moves made, I mean, I bet their FC Dallas quota for his podcast. But, I mean, Chris Richards moved without playing a single game for FC Dallas. He didn't have to play a single game, and he moved on to a top team like Bayern Munich. You see Alphonso Davies moving also to Bayern Munich. You see all these young Americans, getting snatched up from academies and stuff like that. I feel like if you do well in MLS, this is a huge, stamp of approval from other leagues saying, hey, we're watching. I think, honestly, I know we're going to get to this a little bit later, the Luciano Acosta move would have been even bigger for this. I mean, it fell apart. It would have been even bigger that, hey, other teams are legitimately watching you week in and week out as maybe as a reinforcement for the team. And that fee is $27 million. I mean, look, that's not a small, fee. That's a big investment for a side like Newcastle to put into their team. So, I mean, I agree with what Eales is saying. It's, hey, look, come to MLS, come show out. And if you show out, you could be gone for a nice side. You could be gone to a team in the top leagues in Europe.
Yes and no. I agree with it to a certain extent. I think this is a good start. I don't think Miguel Almiron or Alphonso Davies leaving for Bayern Munich and Newcastle United respectively signals now that MLS is now all of a sudden this stepping stone to get to Europe. Now, come on, all you Argentinians, come on, all you Colombians, Paraguayans, come on up to MLS. We'll get you over to Europe in a couple of years. I don't think that's what this means yet. I think you can, judging by how the Luciano Acosta transfer played out, I don't really know what happened there. If that was, we've kind of heard conflicting reports, where DC United kind of, there was the difference of $1.5 million there. There was that report. There was the other report where PSG it sounded like they just walked away. I don't necessarily think that this is now the tip of the iceberg now, where MLS is going to just start becoming this league where young South Americans or just young players in general come to play a year or two and then get on over to Europe. I don't think we're there yet. I think we still need to see moves like this before we can say MLS has now become a sellers league and a league that has become a stepping stone for young talent.
I don't know. It's a little too soon to tell. I think it's one player. We need to see a little bit more. It's the first domino to fall down. It's like David Beckham coming as a DP. Now let's see what follows. Will more players come along? Now this is, I think, an interesting fact. 5 years ago, the average newcomer age in MLS was 27 and a half years old. Now, doesn't include draft picks or development academy players, is 25.24. So, 25 and a quarter years old. So, and this is coming from ESPN.com. It's a fantastic statistic. They're showing that MLS is growing into this youth moment just before they hit their prime, which gives them the opportunity to make the move. Now, if you're an ownership group, Armand or Jake, does this allow owners to realize, maybe we should go this route and try to see if we can invest and get a better return on it once they grow 1 or 2 years here in the league, and then you sell them off for twice the price that we paid for originally?
No, I don't think so, because you have to look into how much they actually do get. I don't know numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that MLS takes you get 3/4 of the fee, while MLS takes Euro 25, and then only a specific amount goes towards general allocation money, while the rest of the money, goes towards other, just development of the facilities and stuff like that. I think the incentive is there for one to continue to invest in academies and not necessarily going after big name players or developing players from Argentina. I mean, we do see that, that Atlanta especially has gone for Pity Martinez with these sizable fees. But if you're the common MLS owner that doesn't have the checkbook of Arthur Blank, you'd rather invest in your academy because you get 100% of those fees compared to getting 75%. And that 25% could be used, towards, again, building a second team or a reserve team. I think they said DeAndre Yedlin's fee for the Sounders to help make Sounders 2. This is just off the top of my head. So you have all these things. I would much rather invest in my academy if I am a common MLS owner than go after a player like a Miguel Almiron. Rather would see academy players come up and, be an Alphonso Davies. You get to keep all that fee compared to only getting a certain percentage of it.
I agree with Armand. I think it's a little bit of risky business to buy players from South America and think that you can, in a year or two, flip them for a profit. I think teams are better off investing in their academies and growing their young American talent and then flipping them over to, Germany or England or wherever. I think that while Miguel Almiron was a nice story and they were able to flip him for a profit, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, they could have bought. I mean, it could have been just as bad for Atlanta though too. They could have invested in Miguel Almiron. He didn't pan out, and then all of a sudden you're sunk. You have a sunk cost there, and it's a risky bit of business if you think you can buy somebody and then develop them and sell them off for even more than you paid for. You're better off just developing your academy products and flipping them.
But let's talk about some other moves quickly. After scoring 68 goals in 144 appearances, Sebastian Giovinco is headed to the Middle East to a club I can't pronounce, Al Hilal of Saudi Arabia for $2.5-3 million. Although Giovinco does slam TFC in an Instagram post where he talked about wanting to renew his contract. He's tried. Guys, this is kind of a strange situation.
It is, and my thoughts on it. I felt like this was coming. Your core of Giovinco, Altidore, and Bradley is aging really quick. Do you really want to sign Giovinco to a monster deal like he's probably expecting and demanding? And I think Ali Curtis has also came out and saying, hey, we offered him a deal to make him one of the highest paid in MLS. Well, that's cool and all, but I know from what we've heard, these Middle Eastern clubs in the UAE, Saudi, and Qatar, they do offer lots of, I guess, post playing incentives as well. Such as security and lots of money after you play as well. Look, I think Giovinco said it's kind of spin it. I mean, it's kind of like the whole Porzingis thing. In the NBA, you kind of want to spin it and make sure it's in your favor. That you don't look like the bad guy, the other guys look like the bad guy. Because I feel like a lot of people are ripping TFC now for what they're doing. But I mean, I think the writing was on the wall, and you know what? He's a great player and was a fantastic one. But I think it was time to move on. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. He's getting old. He can't be forking over tons of money to an aging star. And like you said, Josie Altidore, Michael Bradley, that core feels like it's getting older for TFC, and it kind of showed last year as they didn't make the playoffs. And as our Steven Jodaran has alluded to me through text messages, they will not make the playoffs this year. Don't worry, everybody. I wrote that down so we can come back to that come October, November. But no, this just he had it was time. It was time for him to leave the club. It was time for him to get out of MLS. He great player in the league, probably the best player to ever play in MLS. So unfortunate that there's this little clash of he said, she said thing going on here with Giovinco and the club. But I mean, TFC, they had to get rid of him. It was time.
Yeah, I agree, Jake. I mean,
do you guys know how old Sebastian Giovinco really is?
What is this, like
32? Yeah,
32. Unless he was born in like the Dominican Republic, where they don't have like birth certificates and stuff like that.
Well, he's 32 years old. Like,
so we do know.
So you do know, but how are you guys calling him old at 32? 32 is not particularly all that old.
Hey man, MLS has become one of the best leagues in the world. 32 is getting
the average
old.
age is 25, 25 and 24. I don't know.
No, that's not the average age, Armand. That is totally you misreading that statistic.
We're becoming, the league's becoming a sellers league now. This isn't a retirement league,
All right, we'll talk about selling league. What happened to Acosta, Armand, with DC United?
Yeah, so this is from The Athletic, from Pablo Maurer. Basically, I'm paraphrasing what happened. We all were, on Twitter. I think it was, I want to say, like a Thursday or Wednesday night, when all of a sudden this report came out that PSG was targeting Luciano Acosta, to where I think the universal answer I got when I sent the tweet out to some buddies was, you can fill in the blank. Just a really weird situation where they're connected. This is according to the article, by an intermediary of the club, who said that PSG would go after Acosta for the fee that DC wanted. DC wanted 13 to 50 million. PSG said 9 to about 11 million. There's a little bit of a gap between the two. Luciano Acosta and his agent and the lawyer went to Paris for a physical, and they were there, and then the deal fell apart due to that distance. And according to the article, it says, with Miguel Almiron's deal, that DC United wanted more instead of the 9 million that was offered. And it was a really surprising situation. I'm honestly really shocked by, first off, DC not being able to agree to a fee for him, because I think, if I remember correctly, his contract is expired by the end of the year. So, I mean, if I'm Luciano Acosta, I'm pretty pissed off that you guys can't negotiate a deal with one of the biggest teams in the world. And it's just it's such a bizarre situation that I think this would have been a bigger deal than the Miguel Almiron deal, because it really, you have PSG looking at a player like Luciano Acosta, like, that would really put the league on notice. Like, hey, people are paying attention to your talent.
And according to rumors, Armand, he wasn't even PSG wasn't even the only big club to be looking at him. Wasn't there Manchester City?
I think Man City. I think from an initial report, and a couple other Premier League teams. Yeah.
I mean, it's odd, and the fact that, I mean, we talked about this earlier about, is this, with the Miguel Almiron and Alphonso Davies transfers, is this the point where MLS can say we can send kids to Europe now? For as much as you can point at those two transfers, you can look at this and say, this is how screwed up MLS is. They stopped an Acosta transfer over $1.5 million or whatever the difference was. I mean, it wasn't much for these billionaire owners, obviously. And I think this, for as much as those two were, hey, look at how great MLS is. This is one of those potential transfers that can also. People can point at and say, yeah, but this is also what MLS can do to you as well, and it's kind of a blemish a little bit on the league right now.
Yeah, it is bad luck. I mean, the fact that he was in Paris, DC United holding it up, and I mean, they should have sold on him when the opportunity was high, because his contract's running out and it's unlikely that he resigns. It's like
I mean, I wouldn't resign if I was him.
No, I mean, the likelihood is he's going overseas. The question is where. Maybe they can sell him in the summer window, but the price has suddenly dropped because he's a free agent. And
yeah, they ain't getting $13 million for him.
Nope.
Yeah, there's no way. And I mean, MLS players are undervalued to begin with, so that value is going to skyrocket down. But a final question I actually have for you guys. Maybe it's a little too deep for the final question, because I know we have a couple minutes left. But how do you feel? We talk about MLS as a selling league. Okay, it's great and all, but the one thing I've noticed is fans are a little pissed off. Hey, your best player is going to be transferred in like 1 to 2 years. How do you think that's going to have an impact? Do you think fans need more education? Because they come from different leagues and stuff like that. The NBA, like that stuff, you don't transfer your player to another country.
None. It's not going to have zero effect. Zero.
I'm fine with it. Go if Minnesota United's bringing in players that they can sell in 2 years. That means Minnesota United's doing something right. So go ahead, flip your players. I don't care.
Armand, the soccer education in America is only going to grow. These people are going to know what is happening when they show up at football stadiums or soccer stadiums, and it is a good step in the right direction. I mean, if you're in a small country in Europe and you're not in England or one of the big leagues, you hope your players move on, particularly if they're American. I think if they're American and they make that move, there's even more of an incentive. But we will see if more Americans can make the leap from MLS to, say, the Bundesliga or the Premiership, just like we saw with Tyler Adams of New York Red Bulls. Anyway, listeners, follow us on Twitter, Uncle Sam Soccer Pod, at Armand Kafai, at Jake Watroba, at Steven Jodren. Come back tomorrow. We talk FC Cincinnati with Charlie Hatch.